Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. I feel like my survival series is slowly becoming a creative series at this point, and I promise you we will jump back into survival for some survival projects. Maybe in this episode, maybe not. But I think if you guys have been watching the series, you might have watched the last episode regarding the witch hut project I was working on. I had a few shortfalls and didn't really come to a conclusion with it, and ultimately left you with the question of whether I should even bother building this thing, or if I should instead go ahead and build the raid farm instead. And I'm still sitting on the same conclusion I ultimately kind of had at the beginning of the last episode, which is that I potentially want to do both, and I do want to do the witch huts first. Now, the reason for that is because ultimately the main part of the raid farm that I'm going to be using is the emeralds that I'm going to need. Obviously, the redstone and gunpowder and all that stuff is great to have, but I kind of wanted to do the project witch farm because one of the reasons I ended up choosing the seed in the first place was because it had a quad witch hut, and I feel like just to stay true to the fact that I've carried this project on to the point where I've dug a circular perimeter out for it, it only feels right that I should continue project witch hut, which I have done. And the only reason I'm doing this is because of a member of the server that I joined that I mentioned to you last time. His name is Sensei. He's actually given me some tips on what I need to do in order to improve this and actually get it working to what I was looking for last time. So he's given me a few ideas, and I want to run through some of them with you, and we're going to hopefully try and get this thing up and running to the point where you can kind of see the result of it today. So let's start off with some of the corrections we need to make to the overworld side. So the first correction I wasn't aware of, at least, was the fact that even though the light levels on these bottom blocks here are 6, and that allows witches to spawn, Sensei made me aware that actually even with any light level at all, we're reducing the amount of spawns that we can potentially get on this bottom layer. So the first fix that we're going to need to do is move all of these portals 11 blocks down. So the portal block should be over here now instead, and that should bring light level here to 0 even when the short floors are shifting. So let's correct issue number 1. So I've gone ahead and made the changes. You can see now that the portals are a little bit further down, and actually what I've done is reorientate the portals to where they need to be. So there was a couple things that I didn't take into consideration last time, and number 1 was one of the witch huts is a little bit higher than the rest of them. So this one here is 1 block higher than the other 3. And the other thing I didn't consider, because I wasn't actually too aware of portal slicing, was the fact that the portals need to be generally facing in one direction just to make things a little bit easier. So east and west is the way that the update suppressor works. So it would be facing in these directions here, which means that to make the portal slicing a little bit easier, you generally want the portals to be facing north and south to make cutting them off a little bit easier as well. So I've gone ahead and done that for us, so that should be nice and easy. So the portals are now in the right direction, and actually what I've done is we've got a little carpet bot for us sitting up there. So we're going to take a little trip to the nether side. Whoops. We're going to take a little trip to the nether side, and we're going to be able to see the whole thing running a little bit faster. Now, what I've done here is I've ended up making just a quick carpet command just so we can get the dropper counters. So now all the drops are being counted by the red wall, and you can see here there was a bit of a delay from me being in the overworld and the drops that were coming through, or the witches that were coming through. So this thing is definitely running way more efficiently than it was before, because there was a bit of an issue last time where I noticed, and I don't think I showed it on video, the amount of drops I was getting was actually closer to, I think it was coming in at like 15,500 drops an hour, which isn't right, because with 4 witch farms working at full capacity, it should have been about 17,500 drops an hour without looting effect. And now, if I do a little tick warp, because obviously, in fact, we'll do... we'll reset the counters, so let's do that. Alright, so I've just reset the counters, and as you can see on the bottom left hand corner, we're now getting roughly around 17,000-ish drops an hour. It's saying quite a bit more, but I don't know if that's technically true. Something's obviously a little bit glitched out there, but we'll probably figure that out in a little while, because it should only be 4,300 drops an hour. 17,200 drops an hour, which is the multiplying of 4,300 per witch hut. So I'm sure there's something a little bit wrong there anyway. But yeah, you can see now it's starting to equal itself out a little bit more. Obviously, over a longer length of time, the amount would make more sense. But that means that everything is now actually working as it should be. So repair number 1 is actually pretty much good to go. That's a perfect indication of how we want things to be looking. So repair number 1 of having it all kind of dropping the right amount of items is pretty much done. So the second thing I think we're going to want to deal with now is going to be the portal switching back and forth. Now, again, this is a secondary design from Sensei. I'm pretty sure it's his design. I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure it's his design. But it's one that he's already showed me. So I'll show you the setup for that. So that one actually doesn't require any portal slicing, and I won't need to do any update suppression in the Netherworld, which is actually even better news because I don't have to build 2 update suppressors. So that's actually just going to require using portals themselves. So what we'll do, let me get that kind of pasted into the world again, and then I will be back. And as you can see, drops are kind of evening out to where they kind of should be at this point. I do wonder if anything's changed on the Overworld side. I'm going to quickly go have a look because it is still a little bit lower than it should be. But nothing to worry about here. We are running this on just a couple hours of, not even an hour worth of testing. And I'm sure it kind of equals itself back up over a longer space of time. So yeah, well, I'll go have a look on the other side, make sure nothing's broken anyway. But in the meantime, yes, we are pretty much sure on this side that we're going to change things over. So again, let me paste in the schematic for the new design. So here we are back again on the Nether side, and here is the little device that we're going to be using in order for us to make this whole situation work. Now again, I'm going to give you the idiot explanation. If you want the full explanation, I'm going to try and remember to leave Sensei's video again in the description down below. He goes through it in a bit more detail and shows how it exactly works. But ultimately the goal here is that you're going to be using portals to be switched on and off in order to get these witches back in the Overworld. So essentially they'll spawn into this portal here. As soon as they spawn in here, this portal gets shut off, and then this portal loads up. That will give the witches that spawn in this section here a 30-second-ish cooldown before they can be switched back again. Then all the witches that can spawn whilst this is cooling down will spawn here, and then this will turn off, this will switch back on, the witches will then teleport back over to the Overworld side. Essentially, it's just switching back and forth in order to make sure that we can get the system to work. I have to be honest, this is a pretty smart system. I definitely would not have been smart enough to have figured this out myself. So big shouts to Sensei for showing me this. And this is the solution we're going to be using. Now, obviously, I want to make sure everything works as I expect it to, which it should, because they're kind of using this on the Ambition Craft server on their double witch hut that they have. So I want to try and see if everything kind of links up how I think it's going to in this scenario. So the only real downfall of this whole system is that it does require flint and steels, and obviously quite a few of them. Now, is that going to be a huge problem? Absolutely not, because let's be honest, flint and steel isn't exactly hard to come by at this point in time in the state of the game that I'm currently playing in. It shouldn't be something that should be an issue. So all I need to do is fill up these double chests with flint and steel. And if I really want to, and I want to do a longer AFK session, I can just add more double chests to all of this, to this setup here, and add more double chests on the sides, and pretty much go infinitely. So it shouldn't be an issue in terms of actually adding more if I need to. But again, it's just the fact that you do require flint and steel. Flint is one thing that I might see if I can build a little farm for myself. I'm pretty sure there's a pretty simple way to do this, so we'll think of that another time. But yeah, as far as this side's concerned, I'm going to go ahead and fill up all of these dispensers here. The only other thing we're going to need is lava buckets, because they're going to be the things that end up destroying the portals. So we put a lava bucket in that dispenser here, and then we will put a lava bucket in that dispenser there. And then I'll close this up, and if I switch this on, oh, I just realized I didn't put any items in here. So actually the amount of items needed in here are 38, I believe, was mentioned to me. So let's go ahead and put 38 items in here, and then we'll turn this back on again. And I am going to make a exit into the portal and go over to the Overworld side. Now, there's only going to be one way to see if this actually works, and that is to try and use it. So let's go ahead and kill the bot here. And we're going to go ahead and place ourselves down. Okay, so I've got myself a little netherite sword. Now, I'm hoping this works first time. I mean, it's just not necessary that it will. We're going to go ahead and put ourselves into survival. And again, we'll change the difficulty back to hard. Now, if everything worked out well, which I don't know if it did, we should hopefully be seeing some witches spawn back into the Overworld at any point. In which case I can put on my... Oop, that's not what I was supposed to have. Okay, that doesn't actually totally matter. It's okay, never mind. We should hopefully see some witches spawn and make their way down here. And if I did things right, I should be able to one swipe them with no issue. So let's see how that goes. Okay, nothing's working, but the witches are being spawned over to the Nether. Now, to be honest with you, I might have forgot to, actually link up the portals because I did just make a new one. So I might need to actually go through before that happens, which might be why they're not really going anywhere. So let me go back inside and get that loaded up. Yeah, I forgot this little block with the redstone on top of it, so that might explain why things didn't work. So again, we're going to I removed the observer, so that should now be working fine. I've also linked the portals up, which means that we should be able to go through. I don't need to do that. Okay, we'll try that again, and hopefully this time it should actually work. Let me get myself into position. Okay, it did work, but I made a bit of a mistake there, so my bad. I kind of made it so they fell off of the side. I'm gonna have to think of a way to not have that happen because they kind of just all popped out of off the edge there, which is not what I want it to do. But also, I don't think I can add blocks to the side of it without actually. Oh wow, okay, that's a lot. And I think they also died via entity cramming, so that might not be the best thing to do. I actually think I might need to make the I might need to make this a 3 wide portal instead and just have them drop into a wider space that I can kind of slice them up with. So that might be this thing to do here, because I think I also need the edge of the portals in order to keep them framed in the center. So I can still use this similar concept. I'll just need to change things out again. And wow, that is a witch explosion if I ever saw one. But the thing is once they're here, if they're in this section here, I should be able to one hit them and get them sorted pretty easily. In fact, this should actually make things a little bit easier. All right, let me make the adjustments here, and let's see if we can try and make sense of things. I've done a little bit of testing off camera now because I was more interested in trying to figure out what the right thing to do was, and I think I found the perfect solution, and maybe you'll see it in a second here. So essentially all we're going to do is we're going to have it spread over the space of 6 soul sand blocks, and we're going to add hoppers underneath and have a clock, and you can see just like that. We're going to have the sweeping edge effect take care of all of the witches for us in one swift hit. Now, I have to be honest with you, there may be slight issues within making this work, in that I have noticed that in some occasions the witches can glitch out a little bit and do like a really weird thing, and it doesn't necessarily work how I think it's gonna. We're gonna see how that goes, because there may be a case where this is an issue or not. And ooh, I thought we were gonna see it just there, but we didn't. If a witch does not land in the center block over here, then it causes a little bit of an issue. But I think I might be able to remedy that with a wall somewhere. I do wonder if there's a way I can make this work where I can cramp them in just a little bit further into the side. Maybe if I add some walls here, it might make a difference. I don't know. I'm going to do some more testing, but I think ultimately the main concept here seems to be working, and it looks like it's working really well. Now, having 6 hoppers with droppers in there should be enough. I'm also going to have to test that and make sure that works okay. Or even actually having 3 droppers and having the hoppers jumping in the side. All right, so I've gone ahead and added a max speed hopper clock. We've got some droppers and hoppers going on here. This should be enough to mitigate the issues that we have with the drops. I've emptied everything out, and I've just switched back into the hard mode. I put it in peaceful always just to despawn everything. So the first batch actually should probably be a little bit larger than we're expecting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little tick warp, and hopefully we should get an idea. Okay, see, here's now the first issue that I noticed, which is that we're going to have, in some cases, witches ending up like this. I'm hoping one of them will step into the center. This is probably going to throw spawns off a little bit, and you can see there now that's a little bit of an issue initially, but it's not a big one. Hopefully going forward there shouldn't be any issues, although it looks like there is going to be an issue with drops, because it does look like it's backing up a little bit. And again, we have set another issue with the witches. Now, this is a little bit strange. We shouldn't be having these issues, but we're going to hope that this is just a little initial startup issue. I just saw it there again. I'm not totally sure what I think I should be doing in this scenario. There may need to be something. See, this is really weird. It didn't have any issues earlier on. Now, all of a sudden, it's happened every single time that they've dropped. Again, I'm not sure. Is this something that happens? Really? I could add some pistons to the side to center them. That could be a thing I could do. Let's see how many times that actually ends up being an issue. Also, it looks like the droppers are not keeping up. Yeah, the droppers are definitely not keeping up. This is a strange thing here. Now, this one's right in front of him. And still, he seems like he cannot do anything, which is weird. All right, we're going to have to do a little bit more R&D in order to make this work. Because right now, things are looking a little bit sketch. So let me see if there's anything I can think of here. So, after much deliberation, planning, changing, rearranging, this is the final result that I've come up with. Now, I have taken about 7 hours or something, maybe about 7 hours of R&D to get to this point. And I know what you're probably thinking. You can't see me now because I'm in spectator for demonstration purposes, but you can see my little ghost head. You're probably thinking, Shady, how did it take you so long to get to just this little crappy little setup here? It may seem like it was something that you had to do very little work on, but it was not. This is the main point of the setup here, and actually this actually worked without me turning the machine on, which is kind of the point of how we ended up with this machine in the first place. So I tried multiple setups, which I actually wish I recorded all of. I went through about 7 iterations before I came to this final conclusion here. And so here's the final piece of the puzzle, I guess, as it should be known. So the main point of this little setup here, as you can see, well, you can see actually the witches actually moved into the center. But the main thing to do was to give them enough space that when they landed, they weren't suffering entity cramming. And then the second thing was to make sure that if they got stuck on the side here, we wouldn't just have witches kind of hanging around in these little corners. So I added in this little clock to give us pistons. The original first idea that I had was to have sticky pistons pushing in glass blocks to center the witches to the point where I could swipe them all instantly. That didn't end up actually working out all that well. The reason is because for some reason they would all die from entity cramming before I could actually get them killed quick enough for me to get all their drops. So I was losing a good 10, 15 even witches to like non-player kill deaths, which is not what you want in this scenario. 4 hours before I came to this final conclusion, and in fact, hold on, before we do that, let me just quickly go ahead and turn this machine on so you can see it actually working. Before I actually came to this conclusion, also you can go ahead and ignore all of the collection area at the moment, this is all a work in progress. So before I actually came to this final conclusion here, I went through the few iterations. The main one was trying to center them into the point where we would hold them into these 2 center blocks here and then kill them through that way. But the issue is that they would again die through entity cramming and I wouldn't pick up the drops. So ultimately what we ended up here doing was giving them enough space to fall and drop in here, and then just having to shuffle them around to the point where if any of them got stuck, you would kill them with the sword eventually. So you wouldn't actually have any that got stuck enough to the point where they would just hang around. So the thing is that when you keep in mind that actually the witch spawn mechanics are so slow that you never really need to free up the mob cap in terms of removing them from the mob cap originally. But what does happen is that when they finally do end up coming in through this portal over here, they come down in batches of about 70 or so themselves, maybe even a little bit more. Eventually, you fill up the mob cap, and the longer you take to kill them, the longer it's going to take for the next batch to start spawning in the witch huts themselves. There were so many iterations where I had them in two wide chambers, 3 wide chambers, have them come down in 3 wide, then squish them into a smaller space, and none of it just seemed to be doing the job. Now you can see in this scenario here, it took 3 hits to get them out. It's not too bad. That's actually pretty good when you consider that in some cases before it was taking 5 or 6 hits to get them out of here. So what did I actually achieve by doing this? So when in the last, what I thought was the last working progress, we were getting roughly around 35,000 drops an hour. I ended up messaging Sensei about it, and he actually said that I should be averaging somewhere in and around 40-ish drops an hour, maybe a little bit less than 40,000. And actually, ever since then, and changing this design over and running, and I'll run through a little bit more of the details of the concept of this design in a second, we are now hitting around 40,500 drops an hour. So I believe at the moment we are running pretty much at full capacity when it comes to the amount of drops that you can get out of this. So a few of the extra details that were very important to this, to actually make this work. Number one was this skull over here. So this can actually be any kind of skull with a skeleton, you know, player head, whatever. Just needs to have that same box. The reason being is if you put a wall there, you're too close to the witches that they'll end up poisoning you too often. You can actually still get poisoned in this position as it stands, but never enough to kill you, especially if you have your food on the offhand eating. You'll never actually die from the witch death, from the poison death. But in the other one, you would have multiple witches seeing you and dropping down poison potions, and it would not work out well. Actually, in some cases, even being too close to here, you would not have the sweeping effect. In some cases, you'd be too close that the ones on the side over here wouldn't get killed. It was a whole hoo-ha. So this little skull here was imperative to get this to work, and also it allows items to be sucked in underneath it from a hopper minecart, or yeah, from a hopper minecart. So it was something that we kind of needed to do. Worked out perfectly. You could actually replace the hopper minecart underneath it with just a hopper, and it would work equally as fine. But I found out in the end that that was the best way to go. The second thing was to lock the player in place like this. So if, for example, you do end up getting poisoned, sometimes if you got a couple potions that hit you, you would end up getting a knockback effect, in which case you would end up outside of the farm. I tried using a door in this scenario. The door didn't work all that well. You kind of just glitched out, which was a little bit weird. So this was ultimately the thing that you wanted to use in order to actually get this to work properly, was to put a little block in place. And now that actually keeps us in position to where we want to be. And the other thing was to have the pistons, and pistons only. So like I said, earlier on, I used sticky pistons with glass blocks in front of them. And for some reason, that was not a good idea. But just pistons, nudging them back and forth in like a shuffling pattern, seemed to have worked out best. And all I'm using to do this is a little hopper clock with some observers, just to give us a good amount of time here. This seems like a good amount of or enough time to push them back and forth into without having them shuffling around too much. And you can see there with that little shuffle that helped quite a bit to get the witches in place to get killed. So other than that, really, you just got the note block situation here. So actually this works from both a player standpoint and for a bot standpoint. So if you want to summon a bot and use this instead, you can activate the whole system from this note block in here. If you can actually use the player, you've got the note block inside here that activates everything also. And all that really does is remove this redstone block here to allow the clock to run. It also runs the clock, allowing the dispensers to shoot out all the items. And it also allows this block to be popped up so you get locked in place. So this is basically the design, and I've run this for quite a few hours now. I've run this for about 10 or maybe even a little bit more than that hours, and it seems like we have ourselves a little winner. So after many hours of R&D, it looks like we're done. The only thing left for me to work on now is the storage. Now, as far as storage is concerned, I think I've pretty much found the solution for this too. I tried overcomplicating it last night and found that I was probably being a little bit of an idiot, because realistically speaking, when it comes to this kind of system here, double hopper speed is good enough, or 2 item filters is enough to keep up with all the items. So that's 2 item filters per item. So as long as we have 2 item filters per item, we can double hopper speed a shulker box filler, which I've got going on here. And they don't have to be tileable because you had to have 1 bit of space in between them anyway. So we can segment this like this. The only thing really left for me to do now is figure out what kind of design I'm going to actually want to use. And I can kind of go from there. In fact, if you just go ahead and ignore most of the storage area down here, this is all going to be a work in progress that I'm going to finally deal with. But I think ultimately the main thing that came from this is that this farm is pretty much good to go now. So as long as there's no other issues whilst I'm sorting out the storage system and everything like that, I think I can start getting started on everything that I want to do. And I think the next thing to get started on is figuring out how I'm going to make the portal suppression work in creative first. So I'm going to do everything in creative first. I'm actually even going to set everything up in creative to the point where I can just use Lightmatica to kind of give myself a guide to know that I'm using everything exactly how I've already tried it in my creative world. So I'm going to carry on doing a few other bits. I'll finish off the storage, and then maybe we can get back into the overworld, and then hopefully I can try and start suppressing some portals and get this farm en route to working. So actually, we're going to go ahead and end the episode there. The plan was to maybe do some stuff in survival, and I thought it was only right to, considering this is a part of my survival series, that we should end at least in survival, even if we're not actually going to do anything here. I thought it'd be worth maybe mentioning, you know, at least showing the place at some point. So as I mentioned, we have now set everything up and we've got pretty much everything going. I've tested update suppression, done all the good stuff, so we're going to take care of that the next episode. One thing I did want to mention though, I know I do tend to sit on one subject or one farm or one design for a couple episodes sometimes. That's just how I like to do things. If I'm interested in something and I'm looking to ride things out until the end, I will do so. I'm hoping next episode we'll try and chuck a couple other things in there, but I'm not going to guarantee anything. At this point in time, I'm quite invested in actually doing this witch farm and finishing off most of it. And obviously we still got design and stuff to do, so maybe next episode I'm gonna try, and I'm gonna say try here because it's a lot of work, guys, but I'm gonna try and see if we can get the concrete factory or the concrete powder factory ready. Obviously the end's got another project going on, but I'm probably just gonna make it so I can get the actual factory up and running for now, and then that way I can do end stuff later on. But listen, I'm gonna end the episode here. I'll give you a quick sneak peek of the work I had to do. Please don't mind the fact that it's stuck inside of a wall. We'll take care of that in the next episode. I'll explain a little bit more why that was a bit of a mess up. But I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you do enjoy some of this R&D that we end up doing during these episodes to kind of figure out the best things that we can do for this farm. Again, I know I mentioned the whole situation with the raid farm. Maybe one day. At the moment, I'm riding this one out until the end, and I think it's good information to have. If the raid farms do somehow get patched or nerfed or anything like that, it's good to have the original witch farm set up for us so we know what we're doing with this. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one, and as usual,